again. Day 4. How's everyone feeling? We have Cirque du Soleil in the house. All right. Love that. We're going to talk about craft. We're going to talk about production, and we're going to talk about scale. And sometimes those things don't inherently go together. We've got an amazing group of canalists. Co-host, JT.
JT Pierce, Chief Client Officer, General Manager, Tag Americas, and one half of the dynamic duo that is Stephen Kiley and JT Pierce.
We're doing our best, Kelly and Mark. I'm Stephen Kiley, CEO of Tag Americas, CEO of Dentsu Canada, and we have some amazing panelists. Maybe we'll just go around and let each of you introduce yourself.
My name is Julio. Hi, everyone. I'm a co-head of creative at DoorDash.
My name is Lisa. I lead the brand for TELUS, which is a Canadian telecommunications company gone global.
And hi, Matt McGowan, Bell Media, based in Toronto.
All right. We have this awesome responsibility. We sit at the intersection of creative and media. We design work to create positive business outcomes, societal outcomes. But I think, what we all know is that it's getting more and more complicated. The tsunami of content required to change minds, to win hearts is overwhelming. JT, we work with Audible, and do you want to share some of the stats of what we do for Audible and the need there?
Yeah, I think, marketers are faced with an insatiable need for content. And so clients like Audible, who are scaling and growing throughout the globe, are producing up to 5,000 pieces of content in a week is sort of some of the needs that their media plans are calling for. And that just puts a ton of pressure on creative teams, on brand marketers to make sure that through that scale and that volume, that quality and craft sort of stay at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of leads into the first question. And Julio, if I can ask you, I know that at DoorDash, creativity is looked at as a force multiplier for business, right? It is really, really important. But I also know that at DoorDash, the needs from a surface standpoint, whether it's in-app or promotional messages or activations like we see out here, requires just a massive diversity of content and volume of content. So how do you balance those two things, and how has it sort of shaped you as a creative leader within the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. At DoorDash, we do end-to-end communication, so from top to lower funnel. And I think before we even kick off a project, we try to decide and prioritize where we can put the effort in terms of craft, because craft equals time and effort, right? And investment. Not everything needs to be crafted in the way that, not all assets are crafted the same way. So we do that, we plan, as we are exploring the concepts and landing on one idea, we see what's the role of each part of the funnel, and then we decide on how we're going to craft that part of the funnel in a way that feels intentional and it acknowledges the moment or the moment that the consumer is getting that message, because craft cannot be overkill, right? I think a lot of people think about craft, I think creatives have that tendency of we need to craft the shit out of this. Not every single piece needs to do that, because it might be irrelevant to that moment in time.
So knowing what fidelity is required where.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Lisa, we were preparing for this, and obviously TELUS, for those that don't know, is a major telecommunications company, one of the most philanthropic groups. Maybe you can talk a little bit about TELUS, but you're doing a lot of in-housing and playing with a lot of technology around content and craft. Do you want to share your story?
I'd be happy to. So I will tell you a little bit more about TELUS, because probably a lot of people in the room here might not know a ton about us. So we're a telecommunications company. We do all of the things that you would expect us to do in Canada. But we're a company that's truly guided by our purpose and our principles. And our guiding vision is really around social capitalism. And when we talk about social capitalism, we believe that good business and doing good are mutually inclusive. It's good for business to do good while you're a for-profit organization. And so through that, we've really evolved ourselves into a technology powerhouse, is how we like to think about what we're doing. We're using the power of our technology to invest in innovative businesses that enable things like digitizing healthcare on a global scale, that are doing things like using our technology, the power of IoT, to reinvent agriculture from seed to farm to truck to shelf to fork, and really connecting that value chain through technology to reduce waste and feed an increasingly hungry world. So those are big, lofty things, but what I think is important about setting the stage for that is, yes, we're a telecommunications company, and from a marketing perspective, we have to be able to respond in a highly reactive, fast-paced environment. I think that's true of all telecommunications companies, probably globally. But we also have to be able to build the power of our brand on a global scale with highly diverse audiences. And so if you take that sort of platform and think about how you do that and how you leverage technology, we're really lucky because we're a technology company, so we believe in innovation and innovation at scale. So from a marketing ecosystem perspective, our view on it is exactly that. It's ecosystem. It's understanding how you invest in brand building and big, bold, creative ideas to connect on an emotional level. And then the second version of that is how do you actually iterate at scale using the power of technology? And so we reconstructed our ecosystem about 2 years ago with some of those principles in mind. We know that we need to connect with diverse audiences. We know we need highly personalized messages. We have an incredible repository of stories to tell that help differentiate us from the telco competition in the Canadian landscape. You have to leverage technology to get to personalization, to be able to deliver that right, powerful purpose differentiator story to the right consumer. So from an ecosystem perspective, we sort of took a look at that meaty middle. We took a look at the meaty middle because that's really where the magic happens, from brand building down to conversion. And we thought, how can we use our own technology to accelerate and scale internally? But how do we make sure we're tapping into the power of our partners to help us do that and keep that outside-in perspective, which again, we think is really critical in the mix in delivering that scale. And so using AI, using technology workflow management, keeping some of the brain power inside where it's a little bit easier to innovate, but staying super connected across that marketing and agency ecosystem to make sure that we're evolving at the pace and in the direction that we need to for our brand.
How are you finding mixing your in-housing teams with some of your external agency partners?
So a few things are critical. Number one, roles and responsibilities and accountabilities have to be clearly defined. Number two, establishing ways of working is incredibly important. Number three, which is actually probably number one, is everybody has to be on Team TELUS. Everybody has to be on Team TELUS, regardless of what the other half of your email address is. Because that way we have a shared accountability to delivering against the right outcomes. And if you can get sort of those three ingredients, it's a little bit easier to keep all of the pieces stitched together.
A little bit easier. A little bit. Matt, you've got an awesome background. Former CEO, Snapchat, now leading Bell Media. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about content creation through the lens of entertainment and maybe what marketers can learn?
Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah. Wouldn't call it CEO of Snapchat, but GM of Canada.
Okay.
And for those, I worked for the CEO. Great guy. For those who don't know Bell, also a telco in Canada, and share a lot of what you just shared with the audience, like resonates completely. What most people, I think, if you're not from Canada, what you might not know is like the city of Toronto is one of the most diverse cities on the planet, with over like 60% or 55% of Torontonians not born in Canada. So connecting with these audiences it's not as easy as you might think if you're looking from the lens outside the Canadian ecosystem. But I think we were talking about craft and scale.
Yeah.
In my world, scale is what Bell brings to the table. Scale is getting your message out to the audience, whichever audience that might be. And a company like Bell reached over 90% of Canadians every week across some channel, whether it's linear television, out-of-home advertising, radio, digital, so on and so forth. But craft, I think, is what gets you remembered.
Yeah.
So you can reach everyone, and we all see tons of ads everywhere, every day. That's why we're all here. But I think that the trick is like, what is the consumer going to remember the next day. And that's where craft really plays an important role. That's what you guys do every day.
Where the medium is the message. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I think about the two.
Awesome. I'll just kind of throw this out there, and then whoever wants to pick it up. So one of the things that when we talk about sort of that scale and that like a lot of times that becomes sort of synonymous with high volume content, and you can kind of lose the plot that really what you're doing is you're creating an experience with a consumer, a one-to-one experience, and so. We look at that as like hyper relevancy, and so that you have to know your audience. And so one of the questions for you all is sort of, what are some of the tools in the toolbox when it comes to knowing your audience, whether it's personalization or just really truly understanding sort of them at an attitudinal level? Sort of how do you look at that? Because I think that helps sort of with both craft and scale.
Yeah, I can start. At DoorDash, obviously being brand side for a creative, in that sense, I think you get access to a lot of information. We're a very complex company in the way that we have so many different audiences with so many different sort of like specificities about them. We touch all of them. I'll give you an example on something that, like it's very different than, the work that you see as a consumer, like Dashers, like the people that deliver things for DoorDash. So that audience we have an investment on growth. Everything that we put towards Dashes, any type of communication, is to grow our, the amount of Dashers that we have in a specific market. So you have data to know which market we need more Dashers, which market we should stop, advertising because we have way too many Dashers, so that can create a problem too. And I think as you learn more about the audience and the specificities of that specific cohort, you can get super granular and insightful on the way that you communicate with them. So we had an example of a campaign that we put out last year, and that was with one of our partners, Quality Meats. That was essentially a growth campaign that was supposed to do that, and it was very straightforward. It was not very crafted, not like very insightful. It was just like delivering the message, which is usually earnings and opportunity and flexibility. We saw an opportunity to elevate the craft there because going back to my first point is if you have the time and the investment, and we had both, we're like, why not? Why not try it? Obviously following all the best practices in the space that were, like the platforms. And that proved to be immensely successful. And it was very refreshing to see how craft worked for performance. Like we lower our cost per acquisition for each Dasher by like 30%, I think. With highly, polished, like entertaining content that proves, and then we got more and more investment to continue to up-level our creative on that space. So I think it speaks to the fact, like you don't need to always follow what everyone else is doing. Just you need to see what makes sense to you as a brand.
Yeah, same question if you want to pick it up around just knowing your audience.
I think the way I would probably tackle that is, as a telecommunications company, we're a very data-rich organization. So we're really lucky to have access to the data that we have, and we take that with great responsibility. So just, in terms of data privacy and what we're doing with our first-party data. So the way that I would look at it is data informs everything that we do, from upper funnel, how are we connecting with consumers and building an emotional relationship with consumers. And I think it's really important that we use survey-like data to do that, because it gives us a little bit voice of the customer. It gives us a step closer to how people are actually perceiving the work and the communications that we're putting out there. But now we have this additional tool of AI to really help us take that type of data with our transactional data, with the data that we get from being a telecommunications company, to really get super granular in terms of making that right message recipient match. So by way of example, I talked a little bit about our social purpose. We have 4 social purpose pillars. I don't need to get into them here. We've done a ton of research to understand when people understand our purpose, they're more likely to buy, more likely to stay, and more likely to recommend. So those are really, really strong, valuable business drivers. If I can then understand, amongst the repository of stories that I have to tell about our purpose, what's going to influence you versus Matt versus Steven versus Julio, that's a very powerful tool in driving personalization at scale. if I can then mirror that or map that, I should say, to the emotional connection that we're driving at the brand level, that's really how I think insights and data have the opportunity to come together, again, powered by technology to really fuel that machine. And then you just have a human stitching it all together because I think you still need that intuition and gut feel.
I should go first one of these times.
What she said.
What she said. But what I didn't communicate before, though, Bell Canada owns a large media business, Bell Media. So we, as a media, I sit on the media team, and within the media business, we get access to a lot of the first-party Bell Canada telco data. And we've built numerous tools for our clients. Our media business is pretty much half advertising, half subscriptions. And on the advertising side, we built a ton of tools that offer up in a very privacy-safe, secure environment. We also rep LiveRamp in Canada as of a couple weeks ago. So we've built out quite a few tools for our clients where they can bring their data to play. We bring ours, and it helps, like what you said. It really helps us target and be a bit more efficient in reaching our customers' goals.
I mean, one of the things that's been consistent in every answer is technology. And I think we're all learning about AI. We're all talking about different technologies and how to put things together. At TAG, we're reconstructing our teams to have more of a skunkworks approach and putting different people together with different backgrounds to make things and break things. And one of the things culturally we're trying to do is create, this feeling that failure is a teacher. And it's okay to fail, to learn, because if you're not breaking things, you're not moving forward. And curious to hear from all of you, how are you instilling that freedom and lack of fear within the teams to play, create, and fail?
With AI specifically? Obviously, we cannot ignore it. As a creative in a creative team in a company, we're seeing all the different ways in which we can adopt AI into our day-to-day lives, but also being cautious in not moving too fast or just adopting just out of fear. So I think we're being very cautious about that. I don't believe, as of now, 2025, that we should be replacing some of the elements that make advertising special. But at the same time, you need the support. You can get faster at doing things. You can iterate on things faster. So we're being cautious of that, but adopting in a way that feels, gradually becoming more and more present in everyone's lives. There.
So governance to go play and design.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll just take a little bit different approach. I think I'll take the cultural approach because it all starts with people. It's just building that trust. You're allowed to fail. And as a relatively new Bell Media employee, I made the switch a couple months ago. I think establishing with the team that it's okay to fail. Let's talk about what's not worked often and regularly, and let's highlight it. And I think is very important because otherwise, what happens is things just get swept under the rug.
Absolutely.
Tuition value. My CEO talks about tuition value a lot. But it's true, because if you're not empowered to test and learn, you're never going to learn and grow. So I think exactly what you're saying is very true. In my team, I think the way that I look to lead the teams, and this would be inclusive of our partners, if you think about sort of the cliche sales, always be closing, ABC of selling, for me it's always be curious. Because if you're always curious, that gives you license to learn, discover, uncover, and try. And so with that sort of as a guiding principle in the team, I think it gives license to our team members to just play with the technology and understand what it can do for them. In our organization, again, we've really leaned into AI in so many ways, and that's given me as a leader in the organization the freedom to set that stage for our team members. So we've done things like try to strip away the fear around AI in sort of in the creative ecosystem, because it can be a bit scary from a, how do I use it? I'm not a coder. What is it going to do to my job? All the things that we're probably all thinking and certainly talking about this week. So we ran a hackathon in our team, and I said to the entire team, understand the tasks in your job. Because if you understand the things that you do in your job, it's really easy to then translate that to what can be automated. What are the tasks that can be automated? And if we can free up 30% of your time by not having to write the emails or take the meeting notes, think about the creativity. Think about the opportunity for learning. So we all sat down in a room and we wrote co-pilots of ourselves based
That's
on the
amazing.
tasks that we want to automate. But the expectation of the team is then that time saved, again, it goes back into testing and learning and trying and innovating.
Can I just ask, as a follow-up to that, what role do your agencies play in that sort of exploration, trying, failing? I know for us at Tag, we partner with Adobe, so we're hands-on keyboards, really, learning the tech and learning the tools. And so when our clients, who are enterprise customers of Adobe, come to us and ask us what we know, we're able to help guide, and we're able to work as sort of a consultant in that way. What about your agency partners?
So for us, I think again it goes back to that sort of cultural ways of working, establishing one team approach. And so I want to innovate with the partners in the same way and give the same license. So I'll give an example. Over the past year, we've automated all of our copy for our one-to-one email communications. But it took us a long time to get there, but it was time invested, well spent. But it was the agency that led that innovation and led that process in partnership with us. My in-house team, on the flip side, has been able to accelerate a little bit further with some of the, using Google VO. But we're bringing that innovation, so just by way of example, we're now taking still images of our iconic assets and using VO to animate them for 6-second shorts. But it was my team that was playing with it and found a way to do it, and so now the agencies are using it. So again, it's all about that collaboration, because the innovation can come from anywhere, and I think we all need to have a degree of expertise along that spectrum.
We're a creative production house. We make things, and so often production is sort of thought of as the last mile, and it's sort of been treated like this easy bake oven where a brief goes in and ding, 3 weeks later there's work. And we sort of believe that's yesteryear. That's not the modern way of working. We believe production should be upstream, beginning, middle, and end. It should be sort of this neutralizing force in the media creative data mix. And curious to get your thoughts on production and the role of production in your marketing.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think as producing content, you deal, especially when you're thinking about craft, you're making compromises all the time, right? Because you're limited on time or investment. Sometimes it didn't pan out the way that you wanted. Like we deal with that constantly, and you learn how to navigate that because not everyone sees, especially like with a creative eye, you're always being so hard on every single thing that you ship. But we see AI like being such a good partner in the stuff that you might not want to invest all that money or all that effort or time in things that AI can easily do. So I think in that way, we're adopting AI very aggressively, from testing to storyboards, to sometimes even shipping some stuff that has like a lockup or a pack shot or things like that that has been helping us tremendously, especially in how fast we ship things and we make things. And then we can focus our investment and our time on the things that AI cannot yet replace. So that's our approach. And then in a year or more, or I don't know how, like I think more and more things are going to be able to be replaced by AI in a way that feels that is like reaching that creative bar that we set for ourselves. So that's very exciting.
Any other thoughts on production, Matt?
Just the platform. I think if we look at it a little bit differently, what works on a large, maybe out-of-home banner would be very different than what works on your mobile phone. And I think certain platforms just allow for more testing because they're more dynamic. And I think the earlier in the process that you can think about where this asset is going to run, the better.
And take a channel-first approach at all
Exactly.
points. Yeah. Lisa, any thoughts on this?
The only thing that I might add is, Stephen, you sort of said, like, often we think about production like you put a thing in and it crunches it around and it spits it out. I think that machine is so important for us being able to unlock the efficiency, the personalization, and the outcomes that that delivers for your business. So that has to be a very well-tuned, well-oiled machine. And it's maybe more important now that it is that than it was in the old way of thinking about it.
Yeah, 100%. JT?
Yeah, I guess last one for me. With sort of the proliferation of content and the different tools that are helping to sort of democratize and lower the barrier to making things, I have a hunch that like it may be harder to spot great work, and it may take marketers and creative leaders may need to take more risks. But how do you think about in this world of sort of like all the content that's needed for the engines to drive the business? What role does that like red thread or human insight or like big idea still have, and is it harder to find it now for you in your roles?
The role of a big idea, I don't think is ever going away. I don't believe it will. I think the way to bring them to life will. I think that's my approach to it. I hope it doesn't, because it's all about. I was watching a video clip from Rick Rubin, and saying how I'll trust Rick Rubin. He was saying how AI doesn't disrupt things, doesn't do the illogical in a way that takes you to an idea that feels new, that feels refreshing. So in that regard, I don't feel menaced in that way. I just feel excited about how they can help me bring an idea to life in a way that feels fast, cost efficient, and differentiated too. Because as more people start adopting AI, everything starts looking the same, and then how you make your stuff look different than even using AI, if everyone's using the same platforms and tools. That to me is the biggest unlock.
I think consistency is key. Long-term consistency over the long term is a really key ingredient to a brand's long-term success. And I think now, when we look at personalization at scale and all of the opportunity, that can become fragmented so easily. So I actually think the big idea is probably more important now, and that red thread needs to be super clear. And in that meaty middle, lots of testing and learning, but quickly spit out the things that don't connect back to that red thread, which I really like that term, by the way. Because if it starts to become meaningless, it's not going to deliver what you need. If it doesn't feel like your brand, if it doesn't smell like your brand, it's not going to deliver what you need it to do, even if I've done this beautiful message person mix. If it still isn't delivered from my voice or making that connection. So I think the big idea is maybe more important than it even was before.
It also feels like sometimes that the big idea is like a retrospective. There's so much content out there now that we'll hang our hat on like the one that worked, the idea that worked, but there's a lot of ideas in market at any given time. And then I think you're right, like being consistent around that idea as you move forward and evolving it is super important.
Okay, we're gonna wrap and we're gonna go totally off script. We're gonna ask some questions. Whenever JT and I bring folks in to interview them, we like to borrow from, I don't know if you guys know, Inside the Actors Studio. James Lipton always asks 10 questions. It's the first thing that comes to your mind. Nothing to do with craft, nothing to do with scale. So here goes. What is your favorite word?
Chaos.
Juxtaposition.
This week it's can.
All right. JT? You're in it.
Microphone.
Okay. What is your least favorite word?
Hierarchy, because it's really hard for me to say that word.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate that as somebody who grew up in Brazil. Yeah.
Circular.
No.
JT?
I was gonna say a politically incorrect word at Dentsu is synergy.
Oh,
Don't love the word synergy.
Yeah, synergy. What turns you on professionally?
People.
Big ideas.
I'm going to double down on people.
Creativity.
What turns you off?
Lack of transparency.
Okay.
Red tape.
We should hang out. Definitely lack of transparency.
I was gonna say the chicken that I ate for lunch today.
Oh yeah, that chicken wasn't good. Not here at the beach house. What is your favorite curse word?
You know this one, caralho.
Ah, caralho.
I like a good F-bomb.
Okay.
I don't really have one. Maybe damn.
Well,
Is that a
Lisa
curse
said.
word?
Caralho. What sound or noise do you love?
The Apple Pay sound, confirming that you completed your transaction. It's very satisfying.
Love that.
The ocean.
That Apple Pay sound's probably my least favorite. The sound of the coffee machine in the morning.
Golf ball going in the hole.
What sound or noise do you hate?
A mosquito late at night.
Nails on a chalkboard.
Apple Pay.
When someone's typing on Slack and you can hear that, but you don't know what it is yet.
All right. What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
Table tennis professional player.
I want to be a backup dancer in a music video.
I want that for you so badly.
I'd race cars.
Okay.
To mow lawns.
Okay. What profession would you not like to do?
Mow lawns.
I don't want to be an accountant.
I wouldn't like to be in the sun right now in Ken.
Okay. Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the big pearly gate?
Sorry about 2009.
Welcome.
Good job.
Welcome to me as well.
All right. Well, thanks for playing along, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.